to Processing with Sam and Malik. I'm Sam,
This is Malik.
and we're here just to give you our process on life, sports, in and outside of Philly as we are living our lives.
It's much of what you just said. It's just our kind of view of things as they come to us. So we are actively processing the world around us as it relates to Philadelphia, as it relates to culture, as it relates to being parents with products around us. So that's kind of what it is. So welcome.
And welcome to our first episode. And I think it's fitting, actually, as we talk about processing. Um, for those who don't know, it is January 22nd. And in the sports world of Philadelphia, one Joel Hans Embiid just set a franchise record with 70 points against the San Antonio Spurs. So even though originally this wasn't going to be the first topic, but I think in light of Joel's performance, why don't we kind of just jump into the Sixers, sort of a midseason review? Um, Question is, I'll give sort of just an overall take on the midseason review, and then sort of maybe give an opinion in terms of what the long-term potential is. But I think halfway through the season at this point, number 3 in the East, I think probably at a half a game behind Milwaukee. I think that they have shown to be a very formidable team. In light of sort of the offseason that we had, a lot of uncertainty in terms of our roster, how things were going to play out. And I think that this team weathered the storm. Not only did they weather the storm, but I think that it offered them an opportunity to show a level of cohesiveness that was almost forced upon them. I think that they felt there was some sort of maybe pride component that maybe allowed them to have a me against the world sort of mentality. And I thought that they just came out the gate swinging all season. And if Joel Embiid doesn't miss 10 games, who knows where they would be in the standings. So, in terms of my overall assessment of this team, I think they have a fighter's chance. I think they're in the running.
I'm glad, but I want to bring it back a little bit because I don't even want to talk about the running. I think everybody who's lived and paid attention to the process to the Sixers for the last 20 years, they've always tried to skip to the end of the story. And it's been impossible to enjoy the season because you're always expecting it to end in some very abrupt and hard fashion. Multiple bounces, players getting injured, whatever the case might be. And the 70 points tonight is like, he's special. Like, he's just special, and let's just enjoy special. I don't even want to get into the end of the season, although I think the Sixers have a chance to contend. I just want to acknowledge the fact that they are found money because nobody really expected them to be this. I've been a fan of Maxey, but I don't think anybody necessarily saw him being probably an all-NBA guard, right? And then Embiid being enthusiastic about this team gives them a chance to compete. Where if he treats Horford like he treated Wemby, we're out of the second round. Like that's new territory for us. So I'm excited about him. I think the fact that he's performed at this level and that Maxey and Tobias is on a final year of his contract probably puts Morey in a situation where you've got to do something about the end of the season. The 70 points tonight, it should be celebrated. It should be recognized. And we should try to enjoy every single game before we get to the money in the later part of the year.
That's interesting. I agree with you. I agree with you that for too long, you know what? I agree with you that we rob ourselves as fans when we only think about the end. And I think that sports analysts shape our thoughts that way, where we no longer enjoy regular seasons. It's only about the playoffs. And it's unfortunate because the memories that I have coming up included the regular season.
Yeah.
It wasn't just playoff matchups. It was sort of like Sunday basketball. It's like all of it was something I was caught up in. And now we're sort of being convinced that it only matters in April and May.
Yeah.
So to that point, I agree that it is time to smell the roses, especially with this team that has been a formidable team for many seasons. And I think we are both seeing a level from Joel Embiid that is historical. And so let's take a moment to really acknowledge what we're getting on a nightly basis. And yeah,
Do you? I think part of, because I'm with you, and I believe that, and I know I said it, and I want to believe it, but I have such a hard time accepting. And I think part of the reason is because there are certain games that precede the playoffs. During the regular season, last week we had Jokic, whatever, he dropped 40 something on Jokic and was just an absolute terror. But there are certain games. Recently, we had the Knicks game. They had just traded for Anunoby, right? They went out national television. They had a couple days off that preceded, I think it was a Friday night game, and got their doors blown off. There are moments during the season where we actually want to see them come out and be like, this is who we're going to be. And so while I want to enjoy the moments, I don't enjoy the moments against the Spurs team that's struggling. Wemby's fantastic, but the team in whole is not that great. I enjoy the regular season moments when it's a big game, when it's the Knicks on a Friday night, when it's Jokic at home, when you're going to probably have Giannis at some point in time, or whenever we play the Celtics. Those are landmarks. So the regular season, 82 games is a slog, but I can get through it if I know those are coming down the horizon. So I need to see him do that. Not that he can't, not that he won't, but that's where I get my enjoyment. So I don't have to look to the postseason. And if he doesn't, and I don't see why he can't. I mean, honestly, go out there and treat Horford like you treat everybody else, because he's literally the only person who drives me crazy at this point in time.
He is. It's because before it was like Marc Gasol had like his number as well.
Right.
Now Horford is the only one left that just is his boogeyman.
Right.
You know? So figure that out. Be dominant. Don't allow them to guard you with single coverage. You know, force the rotations and trust your teammates.
That's it.
Continue to play the game the way that you've been playing it. And I think this team, Malik, I don't know if we're going to see a lot of moves before the deadline. I don't think that it's in the cards for this team. I do think that there are upgrades that could be made. I just don't know if the cost is going to be too steep. You know?
So I don't think there is a cost that's too steep when you have this current circumstance, right? Because we can't keep playing wait until next year when every single year there's been a broken orbital, a sprained right knee, a back issue, Ben Simmons passing up layups. You know, you just don't know what it is. And so to get to the point where you're at the end of the season and have a chance during the midseason to ascend so that you can really do damage at the end of the season. Why wait? And the other thing that's a really big point about all of that is we just saw Siakam get traded. We saw Anunoby get traded not long ago. Who's going to be there, right? Like, if you're waiting to cash in, what you cash it in for at the end of the year? At some point in time, you have to make a move now because the circumstances around it are going to predicate that. There may not even be a free agent next year that we really want to go all in for. So you're picking over what's left.
Right. I don't disagree. But what I'm saying is that I'm not convinced that the Sixers aren't right there right now, in my opinion. Here's the thing. Here's one of the things that I think we're missing in this stretch of just dominance by Joel Embiid specifically.
Yep.
How many games where he's not even playing the fourth quarter?
Yeah.
The reason that's important to acknowledge is because they have a top 5 offensive and defensive rating on the season. So to be top 5 in your offensive and defensive ratings, and your key guy, your MVP, has not played in maybe half of your fourth quarters, and you guys are still maintaining that kind of percentage, suggests that the game is done with.
Yeah.
Like, they're putting these games away.
Oh, they're wrapped early. No, you're right.
Even tonight was one of those scenarios where if the Spurs don't hit shots, he doesn't get a chance to go for 70.
Wait, can I ask you though, Sam? When you were watching it, weren't you kind of like, yo, please get him out of the game. Don't let him get hurt.
You know what? Honestly, I don't think it anymore with him.
I was like, yo, don't let one of those pointy Sohan elbows.
Strangely enough, I just think that we're seeing a different type of player out of Joel. Granted, when he does go down, he misses considerable time. So He's already missed 10 games this year, and more than likely he won't get the MVP because I don't think he's going to be prioritizing.
Qualified, yeah. I was worried about it. I know that he's not fragile in the way that we're worried about him getting like knick-knack injuries, but there's
Fair.
been enough stuff that routinely happens that causes concern. And so if the game is salted already, why keep him in there? Like I rock with 70. Yo, hit all your milestones, your landmarks. I'm not somebody's going to try to end all the fun. He's earned that right, right? He was efficient tonight. The game was in the balance. So it wasn't like he was just putting up stats and he needed to go get that. So let him go. But there's a part of me that's like, we know what you can do. I'm not even worried about against the majority of the teams in the East. I'm not even really worried about home court. Because I think he's good enough that if he's healthy, it's not going to really matter where we play.
And you know what? That's such a great point because with this team of veterans, I don't think it's going to matter with them playing on the road either.
Right.
Usually the home court favors the team's bench players because they are night and day on the home and on the road.
Right.
But the way this team is constructed, you have vets that have been there before. And I just don't think it's going to phase them whether or not they're in the home gym or in an away gym.
So the concern I have is, and why I think you have to make a move is because I have a little bit of anxiety, and I'm not even worried about Embiid. I'm worried about somebody like Batum being healthy because I think he has to be, right? I'm worried about what kind of Tobias we get. And I actually really think Tobias is completely underrated in this city, right? I don't know that we have somebody who's going to be able to not even stop, but just limit a Lillard or a Halliburton or even stay in front or Brunson, because we don't have a guard right now with Melton being in and out of the lineup. And he's probably not going to be a contributor in the way that we see this lineup currently constituted, right? He's not, you got Oubre, you got Batum, you got Harris, you got Maxey, you got Embiid. Is Melton even in your finishing five? And if he is, are you taking away something defensively on the wing? And if he's not, then do you have a guard that's just going to be able to cook and get to the basket anytime they want?
Right.
So there's going to be some challenges there. But if one of those pieces out, if Batum is out, who do you sub in?
Covington, if he's available.
Does Covington move? We've seen that show before, right? Like I think Covington's a good player, but I don't want to rely on him in round two.
In terms of like his overall productivity, like his per possession numbers and steals, he leads the NBA. He's
no question about that.
Of a defensive player.
But this is the first season we've actually been able to see a player make a good entry pass into Embiid, right? And Batum is a big piece of that. And the other part about Embiid tonight, which is where I hope we see him kind of mature his game, is he recognized from the jump. Wemby is 7'5" and 28 pounds or something crazy like that. So we're not doing a whole lot of face-ups, but my man got down the court and he sealed all night long, right? Embiid has a physical advantage over most of, if not every single player he's going to face. He is as tall as anybody with that level of skill that's going to match up against him. He is quicker than most people who are going to match him at the 5. And if you put a smaller guy on him, which you're going to see a lot of guards like Drew Holiday guarding him at the foul line, man, back that dude down and eat that man's lunch. So I want to see his game adapt to where he's not pigeonholed like this has been my success. There's going to be games. There's going to be days for the mid-range. But sometimes you got to get on the block and just eat this man.
I think we're seeing a version of Joel Embiid that will do just that. There's nothing that I've seen this year that suggests to me that he doesn't see the game the right way and understands where he has an advantage and just simply goes to that space. I think in years past, he just stayed around the three-point line, floated outside. But I think this year, when he realizes there's an opportunity to seal, do a quick duck in. I mean, he's running the floor well. He's getting down the floor first so he can get the quick lobs ahead. I mean, to me, I'm seeing a guy who understands that the game can be much easier in terms of how he scores baskets. If he just gives a little bit of effort early, then it's like an easy score. And I think Nick Nurse, I got to give him credit for what he's doing with this roster and this team in terms of learning how to play the game the right way. I'm riding with this team.
Do you know where I see the most credit for Nick Nurse? Like, and this is no shade at anybody else. The most credit I give Nick Nurse is that when we are ahead of a team, a substandard team, or a lesser team, the game is over. Like, there have not been many. The reason why we keep saying Embiid's only doing X, Y, and Z in 3 quarters is because we are beating teams and beating them into the ground in the 3rd quarter. And there is no bring him back on with 7 minutes left to play in the 4th. Yo, he's already in like sweatpants and flip-flops. The game is a wrap. There were too many instances last season or previous seasons where Doc Rivers, God bless him, we'd be sweating out games against like it's the Hornets, for God's sakes. Why are we worried about
We did not know how to close. We did not know how to close. We would just pray for the time to run out.
Right, right. And so I cannot remember, with very limited exception, many instances in which there have been games where I was worried about it being close and all of a sudden we lose our advantage with time remaining. Nick Nurse has handled that. He handled it beautifully.
I agree. This is a master class of basketball, and to get all of those guys to play at a high level when their number is called is also something you have to acknowledge. I mean, I'm pleased with this team. Midseason review, I'll give them an A minus. And the reason I give him an A minus is because Joel's missed 10 games.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. He misses another 10 games and, we're locked into that third spot. I think there's an opportunity for us to get the 2 seed. But we have to play A+ ball for that to happen.
Yeah. I would probably be right there with you. I think there were a couple of things that we got a little found money, right? So Maxey was probably, I like Maxey. I don't think we saw this. I want to give Morey credit. I want to say maybe when we signed 14 centers in the offseason, right? Obviously we got Embiid. We've got Paul Reed. We re-signed. He went out and picked up Mo Bamba. I want to think that maybe he was like, we could use one of these guys as a trade chip. I think that still matters. And the fact that we've not developed Paul Reed and he's not got any minutes of consequence, and Mo Bamba arguably has looked decent in those backup spare minutes, because Embiid's going to play 35 to 40 minutes in the playoffs. We only really need 10 good minutes from you. Can you do that? Paul Reed, if we were able to develop him in a space where he's actually contributing, we could probably trade him to augment and supplement this team. I think maybe that was the plan. But everything, despite the successes of tonight, the fact that he's out here probably leading the race for MVP, is going to come down to, do they add to this team? I enjoy it now, but in the back of my mind, do they add to this team? Because I think that's what's going to be necessary for us to get to where this could potentially lead to. We are great right now. We can do greater things. If we
I agree. I don't believe that we can win a championship, with D'Anthony Melton as your starting 2 guard.
Right.
I think he is a perfect bench player, role player, rotation player for this team. But as your starting 2 guard, and his numbers aren't terrible. I just think that, to me, if I'm being honest, that has to be an upgrade if we're really trying to beat anybody in a 7-game series. I just think at some point in a 7-game series that becomes a bit of an issue. I could be wrong.
No, I don't think you are. Not only do I not think you're wrong, I think it's almost imperative, because of how well they played, that you have to go do something.
Right.
And if you think you're going to carry Melton in there, we're going to compete. I mean, listen, pre-Kristaps Porzingis, we were up Game 6, chance to go to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They add Kristaps, and now they've got the best lineup with Drew Holiday in the world. It's going to all come down to them. I think we take Milwaukee, but do we take Boston? And that's going to be the issue.
Right.
There's nobody in the West that terrifies me the way that
I'm not scared of anybody. I'm not even scared of Boston. We split with them so far. I'm actually going to be attending the game in February up in Boston.
That's going to be dope.
And, I just think that, again, if Robert Covington is healthy by that time, I'm not sure what his injury is. I think we have perimeter guys that match up well with Boston, unlike other teams in the NBA. And scoring-wise, again, if Joel Embiid does not allow Horford to be his cooler, then we should be in okay shape.
You need all of this, and this is a very tenuous place to be. Do you think, you need Nicholas, but if you do not make a trade, you need Nicholas Batum to be healthy. That's it. Because his ability to provide length and guard and be another impediment to Tatum, right? And Harris on Tatum, Batum on Jaylen Brown, and Embiid to play Horford, or wherever you're going to mismatch your pieces. That length is disruptive, and he provides connectivity where you may not see the same quality of pass made by Melton. Or Pat Bev has actually been really great, right? But he's not someone who you're going to rely on offensively in the guts of those moments.
I think we're going to see a scenario where they ramp him down just a little bit before the postseason.
Batum?
Batum. I think Batum's minutes probably get closer to 20 to 25 at tops per game. I think it's kind of where he is now. I would keep him around the 22 a game. I would really look at opportunities to even adjust my rotation where maybe he doesn't see the fourth quarter the same way Embiid does it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how you sort of just get rest in there with him, where he and Embiid are sort of married together for some of those minutes, and that's how you think about shutting him down at the end of games.
Yeah.
But Nick Nurse will have to figure that out, because one of the things that Nick Nurse is known for is playing guys long minutes. In his tenure in Toronto, these guys play the longest minutes in the NBA. Can't do that with this particular team if you really are trying to do something in April and May.
Well, their successes in the fourth quarter, I think, have allowed him to rest players probably more typically than he had in Toronto. Those teams, with the exception of the Kawhi squad, the championship squad, they weren't doing this. So I give him credit. I think he's been responsible in trying to allow. And then the other thing that we have to consider is you've got these new NBA rules with rest. And I don't know how stringent or how close the Sixers are following them. I don't think they're taking advantage of him. I think Embiid's missed games because he's hurt, not because he's trying to secretly catch a nap or anything like that. But I think Nurse has been diligent about having these guys play and then being responsible with their minutes during the game.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
We will see.
We'll see.
We'll see. So from one Philadelphia sports team to another.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. So obviously,
I guess you're not talking about the Flyers, I'm guessing.
No, we are going to bypass the Flyers for tonight's show, folks.
Right.
We're there yet. But we might as well talk about the team that is no longer playing anymore.
Yeah.
In the second round of the NFL playoffs.
Yep.
Most notably, the team in green is no longer lacing them up. The Philadelphia Eagles ended up 11-6 on the regular season, in a first-round loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 32-9. Your thoughts on the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles?
So everyone has beaten the horse about how bad the defense has been and how bad a job the offense has looked, and Sirianni. And I think we all be lying to ourselves. It'd be straight gaslighting yourself if you were to say that this team was capable of achieving the same level of success or heights that we reached last year in the Super Bowl. We had really good wins. I mean, we beat the Dolphins. That's a good win. We beat the Bills. That's a good win. We beat the Chiefs. That's a good win, right? Beat the Cowboys. That's a good win. So in any other instance, you would look at those four and be like, we had a good season. We were 11-6, and those were 4 of our wins. We had a great season. It's disappointing. It's sad. It's literally like trying to have 2 kids. I'm so proud of you. This one's in the principal's office right over here. I think, and tell me where I'm wrong, we're going to have Sirianni's me back. I believe that. We're going to have 2 probably semi-retired, not likely head coaching candidates anywhere else ever again be our coordinators. And I think the real conversation is, how much do you trust Howie Roseman? Because we can talk about what Sirianni's shortcomings are. I think the Eagles, if they're going to keep him, they have to lean all the way into him. They may have to extend him. And I don't even know what his contract situation is. They may have to give him another year, just because the minute that first game goes poorly and we look like any semblance of our past selves this year, they're going to be ready to fire that dude week 1. And the players are going to have the same attitude probably. So you've got to do something to give them confidence. And I'm not sure the confidence can only be limited to the head coach. I think there's not enough blame being accorded to Howie Roseman. And I am a big Howie dude, what he's done. But I think the entire organization needs to be critically looked at. And I think there's a lot of work to get us to a place where you actually either believe we are restarting, or you believe that we have what it takes right now with a few changes, and I don't think we're there, to get back to the Super Bowl. So it's going to be interesting if nothing else. But I think we are a lot closer to the team we looked like at the end of this season than we are to the team that finished last season.
Say that last sentence again.
I think we are a lot closer to the team that finished this season than the team that finished last season.
Oh, sure. I mean, we are the team that finished this season.
So
I mean, it's a whole different roster. I think so. It's interesting your take on Howie Roseman. So let me ask you this before I give my opinion. Do you believe that the team underperformed, or they played to their capabilities, and that's just their talent got us what we got?
I think we are. I think we probably were a little too high on ourselves. We were feeling ourselves a little too much. I don't even think it was necessarily. I think they probably performed at the level they should have performed, right? Because what part of the game is going out and getting from the Tennessee Titans a safety that they didn't want, right? And that has slowly been regressing. In name, he's been great, but he came in here and started, and he was not doing anything of substance. He might be a great leader, he may be a great contributor, but we need a guy in the back end, and he didn't do anything. What part of the game is getting two guys, Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack, who were not even playing, and they were going to start for us week 1. Miles Jack retired and then got joined up with the Steelers. Zach Cunningham was probably our best linebacker, and he wasn't on a roster. And then when he left, the gap was so great, we noticed his absence. And then we go get Shaq Leonard, who has suffered back injuries and has been slowly deteriorating his performance, and he's starting for us the next week. Like, how do you go get guys who were throwaways and then all of a sudden end up in our roster and expected to contribute right away and do so at a high level? That's not a team that's competing. Like, that's just not a team. And we looked at the rest of the roster and said, oh my goodness, they're great. But if you've got any regression, which you are going to have when you've got Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox, God bless them, but they're older guys who got some tread on and they've been through the wars. And then you add Leonard, and then you add Cunningham, and then you add Bayard, and then you were relying on Middle Tennessee State's alumni, Reed Blankenship. Like, these aren't guys who are going to be able to step in or shouldn't step in and lead your defense to a NFC championship or beyond, because they weren't thought of well enough on the teams that they were already playing with, or if they were even on a roster.
I don't disagree with you there. I think this was a situation where they looked at, okay, which side of the ball is going to have to carry this team this year? And I think that they felt that the offensive side of the ball is going to have to do the heavy lifting this season. I mean, we've seen it from many teams. If you think of all the Mahomes teams, their defense wasn't always, stout. Yes, I think they clamp up in the playoffs, but they were an offensive power at a point where it didn't matter who lined up on defense. You're not outscoring Kansas City. And so I think they went to this season understanding that there were holes, but I thought they felt good about what they were able to do in the draft. And I thought that they felt that offensively they're returning all 11 starters.
Yeah.
It's time to line it up and add to the show that was the 2022 season, and we didn't get that. And so for me, my take on the Philadelphia Eagles is it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was a tale of two cities. I don't think ever in the history of the NFL was one team arguably the best team in the NFL when we were 10-1 to going to the worst team in the NFL when we lost the last 7 of 6 games, including the playoffs, or last 6 of 7 games, including the playoffs, and defensive and offensive ratings went in the toilet.
Right.
Like we couldn't stop anyone. Teams stopped carrying their punter to the games.
Yeah.
Hey, let's add another roster spot. We don't need a punter. We're playing Philadelphia. And then offensively, it was just like dribble, shoot. I mean, it was just so vanilla and basic that everybody was like, they're running the ball here, they're passing the ball here.
You've seen Fresh Prince. And you remember the episode, I think we talked about this. Remember the episode where my girl Gina, or from Martin, Tisha Campbell, was in the shelter, and it was like some earthquake or whatever it was in the episode, and she was all incredible, but she got really comfortable, started panicking, so she started like pop her eyelashes off. She popped her nails off. That's the Eagles, yo. Like, that literally is what those dudes were. Like, we saw them. They went to Tampa earlier this season and ran for 200 yards in those Cats. Where was that? They panicked and changed. We saw them go and play Buffalo, and they scored 30 some odd points. We couldn't score enough against Arizona or the Giants.
I agree. I mean, even the running, like during the whole game, they were commenting on the fact that the Eagles had only run the ball like 11 or 12 times through the third quarter.
Because you panicked and changed. When you've got certain things that we can rely on. I'm sorry?
My question is, who is panicking? Is it the coaches that are panicking, or is it the player on the field who is audibling out of the call because he sees more players in the box? So he's like, hey, I'm going to pass because they're trying to stop the run. So you just keep going away from calling run plays because they have 8 in the box.
Well, let's work through it. Let's work through it right now.
Okay.
So I'm gonna be your independent counselor. You be Sam Lurie, right? And I'm gonna ask you. You're Sam Lurie, right? And I'm gonna ask you, Sam, to tell me your level of confidence in the following individuals: Howie Roseman.
What skill?
Are you confident in his ability to get his job done, or are you not?
I'm confident.
Okay, because I would submit to you
2 teams that got me to the Super Bowl in the last 6 years.
Fair. I would submit on the counter that, however, he has not drafted, he has not signed, aside from he's traded for Darius Slay, but he's not drafted or signed a defensive Pro Bowler in. Tell me,
he just did.
Who
is it? Jalen Carter, Pro Bowler?
Is he Jalen Carter, the rookie?
Is he an alternate Pro Bowler?
If he is, then I stand corrected.
Yeah,
but not that he won't be good. But my point is, Jalen Carter, we've not heard his name since like week 8. Okay,
I don't disagree.
So my concern with Howie is that while we have absolutely focused on the offense, and I think there's validity to the idea that they are going to carry that side of the ball, they're going to be able to carry the team from that side of the ball. Defensively, we've done nothing but try to patchwork it together, and that caught up. Sirianni, are you confident in Sirianni?
No.
Okay.
I can't translate into Sirianni.
If you're not confident in Sirianni, but we acknowledge that Sam Lurie is going to bring him back, what do you need then to be confident in his ability to coach? Because he's coming back.
You need excellent coordinators.
Okay. So then if 1 week fails, are you trusting him to do the job, to direct them, to establish a game plan, to build confidence in his team, to lead these men?
I think if we have excellent coordinators, I trust Sirianni to coach at that level.
Then what is he doing? Because if he's not, if we have offense and defensive coordinators, competent coordinators, then what Sirianni's
what he did the year we went to the Super Bowl. That's what he's doing. That's what I want him to do. I want capable, competent coordinators, and I want a head coach that can keep the team together, that can motivate, that can keep us penalty free, clean up all the details, those things, so that we can be an efficient, effective team that competes.
But we're in a day and night. Like once I see you after you start taking off your eyelashes and your wigs, I know what you really are. Right?
That's why I need excellent coordinators.
He looked really good when Shane Steichen was here. He looked
incredible. I'm trying to make him look good again. If I'm Sam Lurie, I am trying to make him look good again.
But listen to my point though. When I now know that you are ineffective on your own, and you are the head coach, and you are ineffective on your own, why do I care about you? Why do I have confidence in you?
Show me the head coach that is effective on his own.
I will show you several, because Andy Reid right now has coached everybody, and they're always poaching his coordinators. They're always poaching his coordinators.
So, and that's interesting you mentioned Andy Reid, because some would say the offensive output of the Chiefs is directly coordinated to the fact that they don't have the enemy this year.
Well, but and I recognize that Mahomes is all world, but the receivers aren't. The running backs aren't. Travis Kelce, by all metrics, has regressed, and they're playing on Sunday. Mahomes is incredible, but they still found ways to score points with lesser offensive talent, with the exception of Mahomes, probably everywhere. Let's say Goddard and Kelce are negligible, right?
Listen, Mahomes is that guy, though. When you have Mahomes, it changes the whole equation.
All right, then let's look at John Harbaugh in Baltimore, right? They've got a brand new offensive coordinator. You're not going to tell me that their skill position guys, with the exception of maybe Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts.
John Harbaugh has had more success than the Eagles?
Hold on. Well, John Harbaugh's won a Super Bowl. And then you're asking me about the coordinators, right? The coordinator is a brand new coordinator in his first year. And he's taken Zay Flowers, ODB on like 3 ACL injuries, a backup tight end, a rotating running back, and they're in the AFC Championship as the number 1 seed.
This year they are.
But this is my point. His ability to lead and inspire confidence despite having multiple coordinators. This is a first-year coordinator taking them to this level. They've had success in past years.
First year with Shane Steichen, though, Malik. I mean, you can make the same conversation about the Eagles. How's that any different? He was a first-year coordinator, and they got to the Super Bowl. He's not even in the Super Bowl yet. He's just
my point is that now that Sirianni has had probably the greatest failing of my Eagles fandom, right? where you've lost and looked the way that you've looked over the last 7-8 weeks, what confidence can you have in him? Is my question.
What I'm saying is that if you have bad coordinators, there is no plan. What are you moving to in the middle of the year? He threw the Hail Mary trying to get back.
No. I disagree. That's where we disagree, because even when you've had bad coordinators, your coach is able to say, "I've got some ideas around this." That's the point I'm making. I don't think Sirianni can make those ideas. Has those ideas.
I don't think he does, but I think a lot of coaches would be in a bad space if their coordinators were just not capable of doing their jobs. I don't see. Show me the team that's playing still where they're overcoming their coordinators.
Listen, Pittsburgh had Kenny Pickett, had Trubisky, and then had Mason Rudolph this season. And I'm not trying to suggest to you that Pittsburgh is all world, but in a division that had the Browns, who made the playoffs, the Ravens, who were the number 1 seed, the Joe Burrow, the Bengals, who were good until the injury, and then they were so competitive. Steelers made the playoffs after firing their offensive coordinator. Because Tomlin can coach. He can fill in the gaps and right the ship where it's deficient when you have gaps or failings at the coordinator level. My concern with Sirianni.
See, that's interesting.
My concern with Sirianni is that we saw, and he said repeatedly every single week, we got things to work on. I know what we need to do. We got to get it right. We're going to keep grinding, keep all the things, all the coach speak, right? And despite having bad coordinators, we never saw him make the change. If I'm going to hire someone else to come in here and make the change to help you, then I just should have that guy and save me the paycheck, dog.
But he did bring in someone else to make this change. I don't get it. That's what Matt Patricia was.
Was he?
Isn't that the change you're talking about? It was a head coach who made a change.
I'm saying that on offense, he's supposed to be an offensive guy. He's supposed to be.
Malik, we are arguing over a point that I don't think we disagree on.
No,
I am saying that I don't like Nick Sirianni's offense. I want to get a better offensive coordinator. That doesn't mean that I don't think he can still be a good leader of men as a head coach. I think that it's a different position. The CEO, I think he can still manage the organization and do the things that are required from him as a head coach.
And I'm gonna stop you right there. Where we disagree is that I think in order to be a good leader of men and in order to be a good CEO, you have to demonstrate certain competencies when a crisis occurs. And you can be a great delegator when things are going well. Shane Steichen, great job. You did incredibly well. But I did not see you do that in any point of the last 8 weeks.
So I'm not disagreeing with you. Again, you asked me the question based off of, you said, do I have confidence in Nick Sirianni? That was your first question to me. And I said no. But you're asking me to offer a reason as to why I'm keeping him because I'm not Jeffrey Lurie, right? So it's like that's all I can do is offer a perspective. If it was up to me, since I do not have confidence in the head coach, I would have gone in a different direction. Because I personally, if I am Sam Lurie and I have not made decisions about the coach, I don't bring Nick Sirianni back. And I don't bring Nick Sirianni back for 2 reasons. The biggest reason I don't bring Nick Sirianni back is because there is something about the culture of my team that is rotten.
Yep.
And to me, that is too big of a deal for me to overlook. And that to me starts head at the head. And so when that alone is why I want to just get a hold of this thing.
I agree. We agree. I think where we part is that even with good coordinators, I still look at him suspect.
Right.
Even if he brought in Bill Walsh and Mike Ditka, right, as offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators, like the Niners, the peak of the Niners era with Joe Montana and Bears '85 defense. Bring him in as. I still don't know that I have confidence in him.
You're right. It's funny. I mean, we're saying the same thing. We're saying the same thing. It's like he let his hands go of the rope, and so the question now is just like, wow, you did that in real time. You did that on live TV. You threw them no aid. There was no lifeboat. There was no adjustment. You didn't. It was almost Doc Rivers-ish, where it's like, okay, you're going to get him this time, guys. Right. I feel it. It's like, give us a different game plan, coach. It's
right.
like, let's just do that play harder.
Right.
Or the Titans, I only run 6 plays, so it was just that part is the part that was troubling for me as an Eagles fan to see a team that obviously lost confidence. I'm telling you, this team did not recover since losing to the 49ers. They got beat up against the 49ers, and to me, the win was out of the sail from that point.
So I think there are two. This is the point I was asking about Howie Roseman, because I think he can't be lost in this conversation. I think there are really two elements here. How much influence does the front office have first in what goes on the field, not personnel wise, but in the decision making piece of it, and then there's the personnel piece as well, right? So do you think that they spent a ton of money on Jalen Hurts, they spent a ton of money on AJ Brown? Do we want to score points that way? Because we don't want to run, because our running backs are interchangeable. We want to throw the ball. That might be a front office decision. The other part of the conversation regarding the personnel is, if you believe that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie have a mandate on how the offense will look, well, inherent in that is that you can't spend that much money on the defense. So he decided, I can get one more year out of Fletcher Cox. I can get one more year out of Brandon Graham. I can get a low budget linebacking core. I can piecemeal at safety. I can bring back Bradbury and do a contract renegotiation with Slay. And that defense was tired and run down, and it looked slow.
And I think it was tired and run down and looked slow because our offense was 3 and out. We
maybe, but I don't think they're
playing complementary football. If we're not on the field on offense, what do you think is going to happen to your defense? The way we played down the stretch was pathetic offensively. Listen, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we converted no third downs, not one.
Yeah,
we did not convert one third down for the game. That was, to me, the last half of the season. It was just we put the wrong kind of fuel in the vehicle.
When James Conner, who went 14th round in my fantasy football draft, right, for the Arizona Cardinals, goes out and looks like Jim Brown, it was a wrap. And that has nothing to do with the offense.
But
right?
That was going to happen, though.
No, it's not I'll give you another example, because there were plenty of them.
They were going to have success in the running game against the Eagles.
Wait, I'm sorry?
We were an imperfect team, but your strength has to be a strength. Our defense was not our strength, Malik. That much we are in agreement.
It was not a strength because, again,
our offense was a weakness, and that part no one saw coming.
Well, that's why I don't have confidence, because Sirianni, if you don't believe in Brian Johnson, your job as head coach is to correct what you're supposed to say.
I don't think it's Brian Johnson. This is all Sirianni. This is what I am saying.
Okay.
I'm saying this is a Sirianni issue. To me, this offense looks like the same offense the year before Shane Steichen. So to me, I'm looking at the same weird play designs. It's disjointed. It doesn't have a real flow or feel. It's like they're throwing straws at a dartboard. One time they run with real success. The next 3 plays, they're dropping back on 7-foot drops. It's just like I don't get.
Let me ask you a question. Who was the disciplinarian in your house? Your mom or your dad?
Who was the disciplinarian? I mean, I guess both, but father was father.
Father was father.
Right.
So, you didn't necessarily misbehave when your mom was around, but you were on your best behavior when your dad was there.
Sure.
Right. I'm looking at it like that. If I know that Sirianni can say that it's his offense, and he did, and that he's an offensive guy, and this is his offensive game plan, which he said, but I know that he's only as good as his coordinator, and now the coordinators are gone. What trust, faith, credit, reverence, respect am I going to give him?
Again, you and I are saying the same thing.
But my point is that even with him there and a good offensive coordinator, I'm still looking at him like, you're just okay.
Him, the coach, or Howie?
Him, the coach.
We are saying the same thing. We are in agreement that Sirianni, to me, is not the answer. I don't think he sets the right culture. Listen, before I thought it was funny, right? I thought his whole antics was just fun and funny. And it's like, hey, he's playing with pros. They get it. They let him be whatever. But then there was a few scenarios last year when you saw that Jalen was the man in the room. He was the adult in the room on the sideline. And at first you're just like, oh, that's interesting dynamic. Jalen's so serious. The coach is happy.
Right.
There's the yin and the yang. But then over time you realize there's just an immaturity about him, right?
Yep.
Like even
Yep.
against the game against the Kansas City Chiefs,
How you like that?
yelling at the fans, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like now it's time to eat crow here, bro. You know, like you're the dude who just likes to pump your chest out when you win and you're up, but then when you lose, like you're really like the tail between your legs kind
Yeah.
of guy. I don't
Yeah.
like that sheepish kind of like, oh, it's like woe is me when we're losing. It's like no, because you're all vibrato when you're winning. You know, like you're not the guy who that's what I mean by the culture. So to me, it's like you inherited. We talked about this. You inherited a roster that had a lot of veteran leadership.
Yep.
You were able to manage that group to a Super Bowl appearance. And if it wasn't for a turnover by your quarterback, more than likely you come out with the championship.
Probably
right?
yeah.
So then you go into it next year, you lose two main pieces, you're feeling good about yourself. You think all you got to do is just roll it back out and it happens again, but it doesn't. You have a whole new team, a lot of young players who don't know how it goes. And so you need to show them from the basics. And I don't think that this team had it ingrained. I think that they were running off of the laurels from the year prior. They just assumed that we all remembered what it took then, so we're all just going to give it now. We don't need to ask anybody to bring it. That it's just everyone's going to naturally just do what we needed to do then and do it this year, and it wasn't that at all.
Yeah.
And I think even in terms of the type of offensive reactions we saw during the year, to me, showed a lack of confidence in the play calling. It was the play designs. I mean, again, we abandoned our running game, and nobody knows why.
So, all right, in sum, is there any instance in which you would bring him back?
The coach?
Yes.
If it were up to me, I would have made a decision. I'm sorry.
Made
Because
the
again, I'm a
decision.
culture guy.
Made the decision to
About
what?
the culture that concerns me, and I would have made a decision.
To let him go.
Correct. So I could start the search as soon as possible.
Irrespective of the coordinators.
I want my head coach first.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
agree.
like you got to do it so that he's putting his staff together.
So then, what is your outlook? Because this is what's going to happen, and this is you're clearly not Sam Lurie, and last I checked, my checking account does not look like that. So he's coming back, probably. Every single report suggests that he is involved in the search and interview of any replacing coordinators. They've already made a decision to release Desai and Patricia are going to be moved on. So defensive coordinator, I'm wondering why we did not hear about an offensive coordinator. That kind of scares me. Unless I've missed something, Brian Johnson has not been given his freedom papers yet. So
no, he's interviewing, but no, he's not been released.
And so I'm wondering, maybe there's the NFL has some funky rules, and I could be misremembering them. But if you hire a minority candidate to be your head coach, the team who formerly employed him gets like compensation. So there may be some element there. But let's just say, we move on from both defensive coordinators going, offensive coordinators going too. Okay, so now you're seeing names like Ron Rivera, Frank Reich, who could be your replacement, like your once and future king again. So are you comfortable? Are you excited about having guys who have had whatever levels of experience? They are not the hot names. You are not getting a Harbaugh or a Vrabel or a Belichick or anyone or a Ben Johnson in Detroit. Are you comfortable with Sirianni as your head coach, and then some retread who has had experience as a head coach and some degree of success as a coordinator of whatever side of the ball as your new offensive and defensive coordinators?
Maybe Frank Reich, maybe. I'm a little bit concerned with the age. I don't want to create a situation where there's a power struggle, right? Where you have where allegiances are, and even the dynamic of which you're bringing in a retread head coach. It's like, what's the message here exactly?
That's my concern.
So for me, I think if you believe in Sirianni, then you focus on what you need. You don't get a person that does two things. You get a person that's laser focused on the area that you need them to be laser focused on.
But if you go get Sirianni, you're not going to get why. Okay, so let's put it in simple terms. Like, why would I go hitch my wagon if I'm an ascending offensive coordinator or aspiring offensive coordinator, potentially head coach?
The weapons, the talent,
right? But okay, I get all of that. But Sirianni is 1 3-game losing streak or 2 bad games and a bad half. I don't even know what the math is from being out of a job. Right? Like I look at you brought up Eric Bieniemy earlier, right? Eric Bieniemy had incredible success in Kansas City. He was for whatever reason identified as an individual who did not call the plays because the successes were attributed to Andy Reid's offense. Okay, cool. So he went out to Washington. He made Sam Howell, who nobody even heard of before
Eric
last year.
Bieniemy is a name that if he was available, I would be interested in.
But this would be the exact same. He'd be playing Groundhog Day because he went out to Washington. He got brought on as offensive coordinator. He made Sam Howell a competent NFL quarterback, right? I mean, he wasn't terrible. And no one had heard of that guy. I'm sorry?
I think Howell led the league in passing yards.
Okay, and then Ron Rivera gets fired. Eric Bieniemy is probably going to land on his feet, but he is not the hot name now. He is not the hot name. If he comes here and then he may have the offense look better, but the team can underperform. Sirianni is fired after the season. Where does Bieniemy get left in?
He gets elevated. If he can get the offense to perform and the team underperforms, but it's not because the offense side of the ball. I mean,
I'd love to see it, but
building for a year, they get a chance to understand who he is, how he relates to the players. If I'm an OC, I don't look at that as a negative situation. If the head coach is on the hot seat, I just got to do my job.
I look at it as what kind of issues. Again, you're looking at as your job, but your job might be influenced by the front office,
right? But I mean, think about it. Even if how is that different from a Ron Rivera? Is he less concerned about that if he's coming in or a Frank Reich?
Well, part of the reason is Ron Rivera is supposedly a defensive guy, right? So I'm going to delegate to you all the responsibility on the offensive side of the ball. Sirianni touts himself. I'm an offensive dude, right? So if I'm going to hire Bieniemy, unless he is going to completely abdicate any responsibility on the offensive side of the ball, I assume he's going to have some input. More so, I assume, and there's been whispers that Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman are going to be like, we want an offense that's going to put us on primetime TV. We want a team that's going to throw the ball down the field. We've got Devonta Smith, we've got A.J. Brown, we've got Dallas Goedert, who out there get plays, who out there get money, right? We spend $200 a week on running backs. We spend $200 million annually on outside threats. Where do you think they want to focus? So that's an inherent mandate.
That's silly. If that's how it's playing out, then they get what they asked for.
But do you think? I mean, I really believe that you have to consider whether that's part of it because the Eagles' philosophy.
If it is, then they get what they get. They get what they deserve. If that's how they're making decisions based off of how they're spending their money, as opposed to what it requires to win games, then that's what they get. Then
but think about it with me though, right? The Eagles on defense. Let me ask you, what's the Eagles' philosophy on defense? What's been their philosophy on defense under Howie Roseman? How do they build their team?
The D-line.
The D-line, right? Where do they spend their money?
The D-line.
Where do they believe that they can be successful if this group is particularly performing at a high level?
On the D-line.
On the D-line. So flip that. We never talk about it on the offense. On the offense, it is we spend money on the receivers. We want big plays.
No, the O-line has always carried the Eagles. The Eagles have been known for its O-line. They talk about the O-line being arguably the best O-line in football.
I agree with you, but for what purpose, though? For what purpose, though?
What do you mean for what purpose?
Listen, we just went out and spent a quarter of a B with a capital B on Jalen Hurts.
But we had the best O-line in football last year before we paid that money to the quarterback. The point is, if you're talking about Howie Roseman, the O-line that Jalen Hurts inherited was brought there by Howie Roseman before Jalen Hurts was anything. He's always prioritized.
But listen to what I'm listen to. There's a difference though between the defensive line and the offensive line. The defensive line has Jordan Davis, first round pick, Jalen Carter, first round pick, Fletcher Cox, first round pick, Brandon Graham, first round pick. Josh Sweat was, I think, like a 6th round, whatever it was. He was late, but he's been re-signed, and so they have some idea about permanence with him, right? So they got money in over there. Jordan Mailata played rugby, okay? They had Tyler Steen, Cam Jurgens, mid-round guys, right? Landon Dickerson was an injured guard at Alabama. He was probably going to be a first-round pick. They got him in the 2nd round when he was injured. Jason Kelsey was a 6th round. Lane Johnson was inherited from Chip Kelly. They don't spend capital. They might have developed it because of Stoutland. They might have developed it over reputation, but they don't spend money. The only first round pick on that line.
They haven't had to spend money.
That's the point I'm making. If they're not going to spend money and they're not going to invest, it shows. If I tell you where you spend money, I'm going to tell you where you think is important. They spend money on the defensive line.
Right, because they feel like they have to get after the passers on the other team, right? They have to be able to get after the quarterback, just as a philosophy. It's a philosophy, right? So they feel like they have to be able to get after the quarterback. If they can't apply pressure to the quarterback, then they're going to lose. So I think as a philosophy is why they have the investment in the D line. I think the reason we haven't seen the same expenditure offensive line is because I think that they thought they were good at that spot. Like the Eagles have been looked at as the top O line in football for years.
There's no question about it. But how did they get there though? Right? Like if I can find ways to, and I'm not suggesting they aren't great. They are great. They are going to have multiple. They have multiple All Pros.
What I'm suggesting is that if I'm Howie Roseman in the last few years, that's not my focus because I'm good there. There are other parts of my team that I have to prioritize, and that's not one of them. I'm just saying at some point you choose what you're going to do with your roster. And if I have a roster that's grading out as an A at the O line, and I'm not grading that way in other areas, I'm going to address where my deficits are. And again, I think
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. My only point, and I guess I could leave it here, is that because you have the luxury of good coaching, because you've had the luxury of inheriting certain diamonds. Lane Johnson was a diamond, right? He was a top 10 pick, but you knew he was good. Jason Kelsey was a diamond. Jeff Stoutland developed Jordan Mailata. You got a guy who was injured, Landon Dickerson, who was probably going to be a first-round pick if he was not injured. You've had a rotating cast at right guard, right? But they've not really invested in right guard since I forget the guy who retired a couple of years ago, who Brandon Brooks. He was a big-time free agent signing, but they generally use their guard position to rotate, right? They've invested money in places that are a priority for them because they have the luxury of doing that. I'm not suggesting it's not important. I'm suggesting if we're going to spend the money, then we want to make sure we prioritize this aspect of our team. That's all I'm saying. And because they are able to say, we've got Stoutland, he's going to hold down with glue and duct tape this group, right? Because we know regardless of who goes in there, it's going to be a competent and competitive group. Cool. We want to throw the ball because we spend a lot of money out there on Devontae. They're going to give him an extension, and I hope that they do. A.J. Brown has been a beast. I hope they bring him back. And Goddard's one of the better tight ends in the NFL. But their running backs, despite being able to go get 4 or 5 yards anytime they want, despite making every single possession basically a 1st and 8, right? Because the tush push or brotherly shove or whatever you want to call it has always been successful. They don't have a running back to complement that line. Go get a dude because any other time you could have done it. So that tells me that my strength is on the outside.
But they did have a dude, and they had a dude who was the number 2 in the NFL in rushing, while only getting 12 carries a game. That's my point. They had DeAndre Swift, who is perfect for this line because this is not a power line. You need a guy that can get to the holes and hit them quick and just spurt out of there.
The idea they spent. I don't know what he went, but he's not going to get. I'd be shocked if he resigned here. He was. But
I'm saying that they got a dude. I'm not saying they paid for a dude. I'm just saying that they got a dude. DeAndre Swift was a dude, regardless of what the tag was for him.
If they went out and spent money on like not Derrick Henry, for example, or in past years like Ezekiel Elliott, if they spent money, their offense is going to focus around that guy. Is my point.
I understand everything you're saying. I do. And I'm saying that the way they ran offense this year was flawed. And they chose to not change what they were doing all year long, even to the point where they played a team that they beat previously and rushed for 200 yards.
I agree.
But for some reason, in the third quarter, you have 12 carries.
Listen,
that's a choice.
I truly believe. Like, do you think? Listen, I'm not trying to be some conspiracy theorist here, but do you think there was a reason why they did not run the ball despite success?
I think part of it was the quarterback saw the numbers and audible to what he felt was a better option. I just think that they ran away from the pressure.
So that's Jalen's fault.
I'm saying that he is ultimately he's the last one to make a decision on what play is run. So I know that there were already conversations where AJ Brown is saying that they were audibling and freestyling in the game, right? The Seattle game, he said, yeah, we weren't supposed to go deep on that play. Coach took it on the chin and said that we did this and we did that, but that wasn't supposed to be a play. When I was watching the game against Tampa Bay, Tony Romo kept making a point that, he's like, look, I understand that they're showing this coverage or showing, 8 in the box, but sometimes you just got to run it anyway.
Because you got the best line of football, or one of the best lines of football. Just go out there and dictate.
Or because it's part of you. It's part of who you are. You don't you don't become unbalanced simply because they're playing defense.
So if Jalen Hurts is checking out of the run, then that tells me a couple of things. And he's doing it that frequently. That tells me a couple of things. Either he is just completely lost respect for the offensive coordinator / coach, right? Coordinator Johnson, Coach Sirianni, or he just has no faith in the passing game, right? A further indictment on those two. Or he has just gotten to the point where I am going to take it on myself decision making. None of that bodes well for the relationships that they have there, right? And if you
I think it's all bad.
It's all bad.
It's all bad because what I think happened is that they said, if you see this, do that. And he did what they told him to do, but it didn't work. But he's still choosing to say, okay, they told me if I see this, do that.
Oh, man.
And so I like sometimes I think he's doing what they're telling him to do. Sometimes I think he's like, I don't like that wide receiver screen. Whose fault is that?
Right.
Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there are certain things about the way this team is managed offensively that players can't get out of their own way, literally.
So, all right. So look, you bring in Frank. Let's say you bring in Eric Bieniemy and Ron Rivera as your coordinators. Where are the Eagles next? I don't even know what the Eagles schedule looks like next year.
Both of those guys back over here.
I'm sorry.
I mean, is that a reality? I mean, I need to try to think of something that works differently than it's like the Commanders head coach and the Commanders OC are now.
Oh, okay. Frank Reich then. Frank Reich and
Bieniemy.
Bieniemy and then Brandon Staley, defensive coordinator.
There we go.
Formerly of the Chargers.
There we go.
Okay, so now you bring Bieniemy and you bring Staley in to be your offensive defensive coordinators. Where are the Eagles next year? Are they? Let me put. Are the Eagles contending? I know we are a long way, free agency, draft, retirement, all that other stuff.
I think if the Eagles can score 25 points a game, 26 points a game, then we can be in every game. There's no reason why this offense can't put up those kinds of numbers every week.
Yeah,
and I just think that part of it is, listen, the reason the Commanders play us tough is because they know how to do ball control against us. Like, that's how they make a game out of it. They have long extended drives by design. They're not going for home runs. They're doing 3, 4, 5 yard plays. Like, they know that they were going to try to wear us down, keep Jalen off the field, and then when we get the ball, we're just trying those hop shots.
Yeah,
and we're trying to get it in one fell swoop.
Four plays, 75 yards, touchdown. Yeah,
and it's like, I remember the OC coming out. Listen, Brian Johnson mid-year came out and said that that's something that they were looking at. They're trying to take advantage of more big plays, and it's like something in my stomach. I wanted to throw up when I heard it, because this is after weeks of first down to open a play, first 2 downs, you're dropping back. And it's just like, man, we just will not run the ball. I mean, Malik, I know you were over in Texas. There are situations where people were camped outside the NovaCare Center with signs that said run the ball. No, I'm walking down Center City. There are coffee shops that just have chalkboards that just say run the ball sitting outside their shop. And everybody knows exactly what that means. It's like, we're talking about the
I think I had a sign. Listen, despite being in like extra deep South Philly down here in Texas, I definitely think I had the same sign and same feeling. Even though I'm not physically in the city, you still feel the same anger, and because that's the connection we got to the city. Regardless of where you live, like I can move to East Giblet, I'm still an Eagles fan.
Here's how I'll end my thoughts on the Eagles. the reason I think you needed to move on from the coach, and I know it's not an easy decision for Laurie, and I know more than likely it's too much invested for him to do that now. But the biggest reason I think that you just need to move on from Sirianni is because when you have a situation with quarterback, receiver, and here's the thing, because it's like you have the new guard with your quarterback and receiver. They're like part of like the new wave of Eagles generation.
Yep.
And they're, merging with like the O line sort of represents the old heads or whatever.
Yep, sure.
And you're looking each week and you're watching the body language between the groups, and you're just seeing it just like there's the thread. There's no connective tissue anymore. There's no conversations on the bench. They're not trying to figure it out together. They just all look disgusted every single shot at the sideline for this season. And it got to the point where it was like, don't even talk to me. Like it's one thing just to sit still, right? And there's another thing to not even want to have a conversation with someone. And I think the fact that you're looking at that from two different generations of Eagles, to me, suggests that, like you said, the cat is out of the bag.
Yeah.
Like, this is a person who's just over his head. And I think because of that is why I think, and it's like part of it is accepting you were wrong.
Yeah.
You were wrong. And that's why I don't believe that they're willing to do that. They're just like, it's football. We'll figure it out.
I think ultimately the reason he comes back, or he is likely to come back, is because I know the history with like John Gruden after Tony Dungy and they won the Super Bowl, but there's not too many instances like that. And if you go out and get a new head coach, it is essentially saying we're now in a new 3-year, 4-year project.
Yep.
And I don't think they want to do that, because in 3 years, I can't imagine what the team's going to look like. Let's just go through the exercise quickly. Next year, you're probably going to have Fletcher Cox gone. Brandon Graham may or may not be back. You're going to have probably an entirely set, with the exception of Nakobe Dean, probably an entire set of new linebackers. You may have one, like Bradbury. I don't know what the contract situation is going to allow for, but he can't start. So you're probably going to have Ricks or someone else start at corner. Maddox may or may not be back depending on his cap. He can't stay healthy, and his cap number might be too big. Slay has experienced regression. You need to improve at the Blankenship spot, although he may be serviceable. Bayard's going to be gone. So you're going to have at least 7 guys on defense that are going to be gone, right? And we haven't even started to factor in running back. What's going to happen with Jason Kelsey? You need
That's
a
my point. See, you're making my point.
I agree with you, but I don't think the Eagles want to admit
darn near rebuild anyway.
I don't think the Eagles want to admit.
Start this with a new coach? Why delay the inevitable? Why have this guy buy the groceries for guys that you have a 5-year commitment to in terms of the game planning, right? So Howie Roseman, he's not just shopping by himself for players. He's shopping for players for a coach to use.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like if I have a certain, like if I'm a 3-4 defensive guy, don't draft me 4-3 guys.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't run that kind of defense. That doesn't help me. So to me, you need to have that relationship with the head coach to know what kind of groceries am I looking for. Some things you shouldn't miss on. Like, if best available should always be best available, right?
I rock with all that. I just don't think that they want to acknowledge that they are.
I agree. It's pride.
So they're going to bring him
back.
It
speaks to the point that it's like, you know what? This team has so many holes going into next season. You might as well start now.
Yeah.
Like, you might as well. Like, this isn't salvageable. This isn't just like, let's use a tighter screwdriver here.
Yeah.
Tape right there. And like, all right, guys, if we just hold our breath a little bit longer, we'll get through it this next. No.
Yeah.
I agree. They have no identity. This isn't a power offense. It's not a passing offense. I don't know what it is. It's just like a very vanilla preseason type of brand of offense that just had this tush push that allowed them to continue drives. If it wasn't for the tush push, this team wouldn't have scored half the points they scored all year. And they wouldn't have half the running attempts either.
It's amazing that the game we lost, that play was unsuccessful. Now, they almost decapitated Jalen. They almost decapitated Jalen in the process.
And the fact that wasn't called is just ridiculous.
But either way, I think we're going to be back up with the same coach, new coordinators, and a brand new defense. That's what we're going to be looking at. Which, you know what? I'm going to watch either way. I'm going to still be screaming and yelling.
It's like it's their money. You know, it's my fandom. I can choose what it is that I contribute personally. I think that if it's the NFL, you know, and it's funny because even in terms of moving on from coaches, I know that when they met in the CBA, one of the things that Godot was saying to the owners is like, look, you guys keep trying to hammer these players over money. How about this? You guys have $1 billion right now out there for coaches who aren't even coaching.
Right.
$1 billion in salaries are being paid to coaches who aren't even coaching because they just keep moving on with coaches. So he's like, don't hit, like, just understand you can't have it both ways. You can't say these players need to be restricted in how much we pay them, but then you can pay a coach $100 million and just move on from them because, you know.
Sam, I would leave this conversation for a lot less than $1 million. Let me tell you that right now. Like, I wish somebody was like, yo, I'm gonna pay you to go away.
Like the dude from the Cardinals, he took the first thing smoking a Bali, man. He went to Bali after he got fired.
Yo, I wish somebody would tell me to go away. Anyway, so we'll see what it is. So what else you got, man? What else is going on?
Last one, man. So, you know, here's a question. I think it's just we'll just always sort of close the night. And I think it's just sort of an homage or a nod to our podcast title. But what are you processing, my friend?
You know what, man? It's wild. You mentioned your fandom earlier, and I think politically, not to make this a long conversation about politics, but fandom, the fanaticism, the passion around politics, I think are all related. And we've seen town halls, particularly in the Republican side, because of, you know, they are nominating their candidate for president. And it got me thinking about my fandom. And I do believe, in some sense, regardless of your affiliation, race, creed, sex, gender, beliefs, ideals, whatever, that there really should be a voter free agency at the end of every single term, whether it be the midterms, or whether it be on presidential elections. Because I am looking at what the circumstances that people are moved by, what they complain about, what is going on in the country, whether it's going on locally with your elected officials at the state and local levels. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself that there's no one size fits all for your party affiliation. There is no, you should never go in and unilaterally just select all D's, all R's, or whatever. And that there literally needs to be, despite how you may be raised, despite whatever conventions are associated with your ideas, a voter free agency. Because doing a particular thing the same way every single time, I understand it is often described as being crazy or lunacy. But if you are going to continue on that same road as a voter, and you just continue to pick and don't make any real changes based on your preferences in the party that affects you, you're consigned to the exact same fate. So free agency, voter free agency is where we are at right now. That is what I'm looking at right now. I'm processing voter free agency, yo.
My brother, that is a good one, man.
And that is not necessarily something I wanted to talk about, but it is something that, because of what's going on this week, because of kind of the state that I live in, because of the conversations around what's going on in the news and what's going on locally, where it's like, you know, I rock with certain things. I feel you on other things. But voter free agency, where it's like, literally, man, if you want to come in here and you want to lower these property taxes, cool. If you want to got these student loans, I'm your guy. If you want to go ahead and address the border, maybe I'll just consider that. If you got women's health issues, let's talk about, but voter free agency, that's where we are right now. So I'm waiting for 2 first-round draft picks to show up on my door to get my vote. That's where I'm waiting at right now.
I like that.
So that is what's on my mind, and the fact that I almost had to decapitate my child because he was trying to slack on his homework. So that's a whole other conversation.
So what am I processing? Here's what I'm processing. I am processing a post-COVID environment where in the Northeast, it's like people can't shake respiratory issues.
Mm.
Even my household with my children, it's like it's ear infection one week or some sort of like nasal throat something or other. I feel like it bounces on us and we're pinging it back and forth. It's a very strange existence. And
Mhm.
when we go to CHOP, Children's Hospital,
Mhm.
it what we are hearing is that we aren't the only ones.
Yeah.
Like my daughter's teacher said that her son had a fever for like 6 straight days. It's like it's unheard of. I didn't grow up in environments like this where kids had fevers for a week.
Yep.
It's like you go to the hospital, you have fever for a week, and now the hospital's like, is it only just been a week? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the eighth
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
now you call me.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
now it's like this is a very different environment we're living in. So I'm just processing what does it even mean to be healthy today? Well, like
Yeah.
how do we understand what taking care of ourselves means? Like what are we going to have to learn to endure in terms of just like ailments in the future?
So, besides the fact that there are mornings where I wake up and I wonder, like, did I sleep wrong or did somebody fight me? Like, I'm not really sure what happens. The other conversation becomes, yo, it wasn't so bad. And I'm gonna whisper this because I'm gonna make some people here in Texas really upset with me. It really wasn't so bad wearing a mask all the time because I would get sick this time of year all the time, or my children in the fall. And because it was a mandate, you know what, for the greater health of, my fellow man and woman, we were doing what we were asked to do and we had no issue with it. And because obviously it was a life-threatening issue for some folks, we had no concerns. And that is not a political statement, it's just the truth. That's what we were dealing with. And so we were outdoors, we socially distanced, but we wore masks. And you know what, coincidentally, we didn't get sick. We did not get sick. And it was really nice to go into a world. I know this is not exactly what you were talking about. It was really nice to be able to avoid those circumstances because they have gotten so dramatic and so drastic as you had described. Where
Right.
you're talking about 4 or 5 days at a fever or have to go to a hospital.
Right.
And I think that we have gotten extremely cavalier in that. And so where people are working in more remote spaces, you have an uptick in homeschools where people aren't around each other. It's no surprise now where you see kids who are sick or coworkers who are sick for extended periods of time because we're more isolated than ever.
Right. And here's the other part. We have like a bout of the measles in our area.
Mm.
Kids with the measles. So it's like it's just a strange. I'm processing a very new world we're living in post-COVID, post-pandemic, post-isolation, whatever the contributors are. It has impacted our bodies.
Yeah.
And even with my wife, she went to the physician and they were just explaining like these respiratory things that people are just suffering through, where it's like this mucus is building up people, and it's just like it's just there.
Yeah.
And all the physicians are aware of what's happening in our area, and they're talking about it even on the radio. I'll see if I can include a clip with this video where, they're trying to explain it away in the way that is supposed to pacify us, right? Where it's like, oh, it's just this. So you might have a call for 4 or 5 weeks. It's like, come on, man. How can you make a statement like that with a face like that?
Yeah.
There's something wrong with 4 or 5 weeks of a cough.
Yeah.
They have to make it seem like this is, just the new normal. It's okay. Hey, if it's only been 5 weeks, you should be all right. Just remember a glass of water every night, folks. But the reality is like, what's going on?
Well, listen, I think part of it is the fact that this is the pendulum is swung. Now, again, I live in Texas. I'm from there, but I live in Texas now. I live outside of Houston. And what I have seen here is that there was the mandate imposed by the federal government and then passed down adopted by a lot of state governments and state health officials. And then what happened was, because there was for the greater good, you need to do X, Y, and Z. It was, a resistance to the isolation. It was a resistance to closing down the businesses and wearing masks and all that other stuff. And it was an impetus to stay home, keep your child home if you were sick. I can't tell you how many instances where Thomas or Aaron were 99 degrees or 100 degrees for like 12 minutes, and then all of a sudden we had to go get them from school, and that was okay because that's what they did, and we were willing to comply with it. All good, right? They were take some Tylenol, get a nap, back in school the next day because you had to be fever free for 24 hours without drugs, and it was not a problem. Now the pendulum has swung so far the other direction where you've got to basically be dying twice to go see a doctor. We are not going to believe what you're telling us. We are not going to treat. We are not going to be careful. We are not going to exhibit any kind of caution or consideration for somebody else. The pendulum is swung the other direction. And I think that this is a reaction to what many perceive to be an unduly harsh burden imposed by COVID. And so while you do have, there's the cough, there's the fever. Well, you know what? You probably should have started treated it and stayed home. Instead, you may take the position of, I don't want to deal with it. It's not that bad. I can go to work. I'm going to go out to the restaurant, and I'm going to just spread as deeply this cough and these germs as far and wide as I possibly can because I believe I'm fine and you're not. And that's it.
Right. No,
treat it and cure
it. That I hear you with if the cough went away. This East Coast cough is not going away, man.
Well, dog, y'all still smoke cigarettes in bars, whatever y'all do up there, man. Come on.
True. That is true. Maybe that's part of it. But it is not going to. I know people, it's like, I talk to them and it's like, man, I've had this cough since September. And it's like, we're in January, and it's real, and so it's like, I either shut my life down. And honestly, I think we at least still have the luxury where if it is bad, people are not going to the office. They're not going into places of worship where it's just like, it's one of those days, like if our children are just out of pocket, it's like, I'm not going to send them into the school. It's like, I don't care if everyone.
Are in those instances, are you seeing people actually go receive medical treatment? I'm not talking about over-the-counter drugs. I'm not talking about a virtual, because sometimes you actually need to go see a doctor.
I am seeing people receive medical treatment.
If you're in those instances where you're seeing or hearing people say, like, I've got a 4 or 5 day cough, I've got an extended fever, are they getting medical treatment?
I have.
You have? Okay.
Yeah. My wife actually just went to the doctor, 2 days ago, like this is, and it's funny, not funny, haha, but this just now, we're putting our son down and all of a sudden she's like, yo, I feel like I'm about to get sick again. Like the first day of being sick. And it's just like, you can just see the look on her face of just feeling defeated. Like I just came back from there and they didn't have real answers for me. And like, all of a sudden I feel like I'm about to go through another cycle of this thing. And I just felt like, damn. And here's the worst part about it. It's like, as much as I was like, oh my goodness, not again. The other part was like, well, how do I make sure I don't catch it? You know what I mean? Because like it has been just seemingly bouncing around. It's like we can't just all kick it at once. But now I'm starting to think like there's nothing to. No one's kicking this thing.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's the wear and tear on like your mental space when you're not physically well. Like, we all know what it feels like just to want to feel normal. Just want to like not ail and ache in any way and just feel like yourself again. And to go through stretches like this where you don't feel yourself, I think it can be really debilitating mentally, where it's like there's other deterioration that just starts taking place because you're just like, you start giving up on situations because like, man, I'm not healthy anyway.
Yeah. No,
so it's just processing, just sort of, and maybe when spring breaks and, different air comes in, all of this changes, who knows? What I'm hearing is that, cicadas that have been asleep for 200 years are about to say hello.
Yo, and I remember the lantern flies from a couple of years ago. What? Yo, y'all sound like a Stephen King movie up there, man.
It was bad, man. It was ridiculous. It was really ridiculous. The way they attacked our trees was just like, what are those things? And so now here's what's funny. A natural predator, if you will, is now in our habitat to deal with them. Praying mantis. There's praying mantis everywhere because they deal with the lanternflies. So like this summer, we're like, I have a video of me taking one out of my house. I'm like, I have a praying mantis. This one's not the same one that was outside. It's a different one, But it's because we have lanternflies everywhere. So when these cicadas come out of the woodworks, who knows what's
really in these streets
that's going to then trigger,
Y'all gonna start having like plagues and like toads and
happening, man.
Locusts and boils, and your firstborn son's gonna disappear.
Listen, I just saw a guy scan his palm for payment. I think you can do it when you he is in some sort of store and he just scanned his palm for payment. It's a guy I know.
Yeah, just needs to come back. Like, I honestly, like, his hands probably more.
I know it's not even like YouTube thing. It's like I know him. This is a person. This is
there are Amazon or there are several companies that are trying to implement these like frictionless stores, basically, where you just have it like a credit card in your pocket or your palm for payment or whatever it is. Dog, come on, man. Like what, for what?
It was put in writing, man, because it's inevitable.
Yeah, man, these cicadas, palm payments. Just cancel 2024, yo. I'm good. Just cancel the whole year. I'm good. I'm good on all of us, yo. I'm good. You got cicadas come out the ground.
There for us to show improve. Like, this is going to be a year. This is going to be quite a year. That's why I'm glad we're starting this.
Yeah, man.
We need to document what happens as we process 2024.
And what a year I'm sure it'll be. So hopefully we get through the cicadas and the black lung and get to a better Eagle season on the end of this.
Yeah.
So, very cool, man.
This was good, man. It's our first show. We hope you enjoyed. Please feel free to make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below. We definitely want to make sure that we hear what you have to say on our topics. And, just stay tuned because we will be having guests. When the invitation comes, don't hesitate. That's what I want to leave everybody with today. There are moments and times when opportunities are in front of you. Don't hesitate because you see it, you feel it, you sense it, and sometimes you get shy in that moment. Don't get shy in that moment. 2024, when those opportunities present itself, don't second guess it. It's a real thing. It's a real feeling. Something really leaps in you. Snatch it.
Yeah.
Just snatch it and see what happens next.
Hashtag won't he do it? You ought to have me pass around the offering plate. I agree with you on that. I agree with that. I echo that sentiment. Absolutely.
So until next time, folks.
Sounds good, man.
There it is. Take care.
Be well.
Be well.
Check out our new show, Processing, with Sam and Malik. Monday nights, 10 o'clock Eastern Time on YouTube. Just search Sam's 2 Community.